the wind-battered high realm of Karethwyn, where obsidian towers pierced through endless layers of drifting fog and the sea below never stopped. Roaring like an ancient warning, power was never spoken of directly, it was implied, traded and buried. The noble houses did not rule with open hands, but with sealed ledgers and silent agreements that could erase entire bloodlines without a single sword drawn. At the center of this fragile dominion stood Duke Aurelian Draycott of House Virelin, a man known across the Eastern Dominion as the Silent Ledger, not because he spoke little, but because nothing he spoke could be trusted to be emotion over calculation. He was precise, unshaken, and disturbingly unreadable. Those who negotiated with him often left with everything they wanted, and something they did not realize they had surrendered. No one expected him to take interest in Selene Vaelith. She arrived in Karethwyn under imperial sanction from the Grand Registry of Fiscal Integrity, a neutral body that audited noble estates once every decade to prevent hidden collapses in the kingdom's economy. Her presence alone was unsettling to the court. Because auditors were not welcomed, they were endured. Selene was unlike anyone the court had seen before. She wore no jewelry, no insignia of rank, only ash-dyed robes lined with ink stains and worn cuffs from years of ledger work. Her presence was quiet but not submissive. Her eyes carried a strange steadiness, as if she had already seen the worst outcomes and simply learned to continue walking anyway. On her first formal inspection day inside the Obsidian Council Hall, where black marble pillars reflected torchlight like fractured memories, Selene did something unprecedented. A senior noble had presented falsified tax distributions tied to coastal grain exports. No one questioned it, not because they believed it was correct, but because no one dared challenge house authority in open court. Selene did. She stood before the assembled council, unrolled her parchment calmly, and pointed out a discrepancy that linked 3 noble estates to a concealed extraction route draining resources from the lower fishing settlements. The chamber froze. Even the scribes stopped writing. The noble who presented the report laughed at first, until Selene placed a second document on the table that matched royal treasury seals dating back 15 years. Silence replaced arrogance almost instantly. Aurelian Draycott, seated on the elevated obsidian throne step at the far end of the hall, watched her without expression. But something in his gaze sharpened, not with anger, but recognition. Selene simply adjusted her ink-stained gloves and said, "Truth does not require permission to exist, only acknowledgement." That sentence should have been forgotten the moment it was spoken, but it wasn't. After the council session, Aurelian summoned her under the guise of procedural review. The meeting took place in the Hall of Hollow Measures, a private chamber used only for high-level audits of royal finances. The room itself was lined with suspended glass tablets containing recorded ledgers that glowed faintly in blue script. Selene stood across from him without lowering her gaze. Most people in her position would have shown deference. She did not. Aurelian began with formalities but quickly shifted into deeper inquiry. He tested her knowledge through layered questions, expecting hesitation or error. She answered each one with unsettling clarity. Hours passed without either of them realizing how long they had been speaking. At some point, the conversation stopped being about finances entirely. It became about structure, how systems fail, how corruption sustains itself, and how truth often survives only when someone is willing to stand alone with it. Selene never once referred to him as Your Grace. That was the first irritation he could not categorize. To her, he was simply Aurelian, a man with too many locked doors behind his eyes. What Selene did not know was that Aurelian Draycott was not free despite his title. Years ago, House Virelin had collapsed under debt so severe it could not be paid through gold alone. In its place rose a binding contract with the Umbral Accord, a hidden financial dominion operating beyond the Crown's jurisdiction. The Accord did not lend money. It lent survival and collected obedience in return. Every noble favor Aurelian performed was repayment for a debt that never reduced, only transformed. And now the Accord had turned its attention to Selene Vaelith, because she had uncovered something buried beneath the kingdom's foundation. An ancient, pattern of land reclamation masked as inheritance law adjustments. Entire coastal villages had been erased on paper, their ownership quietly transferred into noble estates across generations. If Selene published her findings, Karethwyn's noble hierarchy would not weaken, it would collapse entirely. The Umbral Accord issued its directive through a black-sealed cipher delivered without witness. Neutralize her audit chain, preserve structural stability, or surrender all holdings of House Virellan. Aurelian read the order once. Then again, there was no negotiation, only containment. So he made a decision that would later be recorded in no ledger, spoken in no court, and forgiven in no history. He would bind Selene Vaelith to him, not through force but through perception, through trust carefully shaped until it felt like safety. He began subtly. He ensured her access to restricted archives without raising suspicion. He redirected internal resistance from the council that wanted her removed. He positioned himself quietly as her only stable ally in a court that was beginning to view her as a threat. Selene noticed none of it as manipulation, because every step he took appeared, on the surface, like protection. But Selene was not naive. One evening, deep inside the archive of unwritten records, an underground library where failed laws, erased names, and discarded treaties were stored, she finally confronted him. The chamber was vast, lined with floating shelves suspended by ancient gravity runes. Dust drifted like slow snowfall under dim crystal light. Selene did not look up from the ledger she was reviewing when she spoke. You don't observe people like a ruler. You calculate them like assets. Tell me, Duke Draycott, am I an asset worth protecting, or a risk worth eliminating? Question hung in the air longer than either of them expected. For the first time, Aurelian did not respond immediately, not because he lacked an answer, but because every answer he had was dangerous. Instead, he chose a path that felt less like strategy and more like inevitability. He protected her work more aggressively. He redirected accusations forming within the council. He ensured no harm came near her investigations, even when doing so increased scrutiny on himself. And slowly, something unfamiliar began to take root in Selene's perception of him. Not trust exactly, but reliance, and in Karethwyn, reliance was the first step toward vulnerability. Their interactions grew more frequent, not by invitation but by necessity disguised as coincidence. Midnight discussions over fractured ledgers, shared review of coastal claim disputes, quiet walks through corridors where even footsteps seemed forbidden. But beneath the surface of this fragile alignment, tension was building elsewhere. The Umbral Accord grew impatient. A second directive arrived, this time not sealed in black wax, but embedded into a fractured crystal shard that dissolved upon contact with Aurelian's desk. Emotional containment insufficient. Bind her completely or collapse begins within 30 days. That night, Aurelian stood alone in the highest tower of House Virellan, overlooking the storm-lit sea. The wind pressed against the glass like something's alive trying to enter. For the first time in years, he did not calculate outcomes immediately. He hesitated. And hesitation, in his world, was a form of failure, so he chose the only remaining path. He would make Selene Vaelith believe that whatever was growing between them was real, not because it was, but because belief was the most efficient form of control. Yet beneath the grand registry, far below where even royal permission could reach, a sealed vault that had remained locked for over a decade suddenly registered an internal breach. No forced entry, no external access. The mechanism simply responded, as if someone inside had finally decided to open it. And when the vault doors parted, revealing a chamber untouched by time, a single ledger lay waiting on the stone floor. Its pages were dry, but its ink shimmered faintly, as if freshly written. The first entry listed multiple financial operations tied directly to House Virellan's hidden debts, but the final page contained something far more disturbing. A complete record of Selene Vaelith's identity, dated 5 years before she ever arrived in Karethwyn, and beneath it, written in Aurelian Draycott's signature ink, was a sentence that should not have been possible under any law of time or record-keeping. She will arrive exactly when the collapse begins. And at the bottom of the page, one final line appeared, fresh as if written at that very moment, and she will never leave. The question is no longer whether Aurelian is manipulating Selene, but who authored the ledger that already knows her future before she has lived it. If you're ready for the next twist, tell me, but be careful, because what Selene uncovers next will not just break trust, it will break reality inside. Karethwyn itself. The underground vault beneath the Grand Registry of Karethwyn was never meant to open on its own. Its seals were woven with old-world cipher magic, the kind that responded only to authorized bloodlines and registered imperial decrees. Yet the stone doors had parted without force, without sound, as if the structure itself had recognized a truth more binding than law. Selene Vaelith stood at the threshold, ash-gray auditor robes brushing against the cold stone floor, ink-stained fingers tightening around the edge of her leather satchel. Her round glasses reflected the faint blue glow spilling from within the chamber. Duke Aurelian Draycott stood a few steps behind her, his presence silent but suffocating. Jet-black hair tied back, cold gray eyes locked on the vault interior, obsidian coat catching faint rune light along its silver embroidery. For the first time in years, his composure did not feel absolute. It felt controlled, as if held together by discipline alone. Inside the vault, the air was unnaturally still. Floating dust hung suspended as though time itself had slowed down. At the center of the chamber lay a single obsidian pedestal. On it rested a ledger bound in blackened leather, untouched by age, glowing faintly with a pulse-like rhythm. Selene stepped forward first. "This isn't part of any registry archive," she whispered. Aurelian did not respond immediately. His black gemstone rings clicked faintly as his hand tightened into a slow fist. "It shouldn't exist," he said at last, voice low and restrained. Selene opened the ledger. The moment her fingers touched the first page, the rune markings along the edges flared blue. Her eyes scanned the text slowly. At first it looked like financial structuring, old noble debt charts, inheritance routes, land redistribution patterns. But the deeper she read, the more the structure shifted into something disturbing. These were not just records, they were predictions. Selene Vaelith's name appeared repeatedly across entries dated years before her arrival in Karethwyn, her audit assignment, her travel authorization, even her entry through the Eastern Gate, all documented in precise chronological order, as if already completed in advance. Selene's breath slowed. This is impossible," she said. Aurelian stepped closer, his shadow falling over the glowing pages. For the first time, something in his expression fractured. Not fear exactly, but recognition. That ledger was sealed before the Umbral Accord took control of House Virellan finances, he said. No one has accessed it in over a decade. Selene turned a page slowly. The ink on the next section shimmered differently, as though freshly written despite its supposed age. It contained a full analysis of the Karethwyn coastal settlements, mapping every erased village, every redirected inheritance, every falsified noble claim. It matched her own findings exactly. But then she saw something that made her freeze completely. A section labeled Primary Variable Anchor Selene Vaelith. Beneath it, a classification she had never seen before in any registry system. Catalyst of structural collapse. Her hands trembled slightly as she read further. The ledger didn't just describe corruption, it described outcomes. Entire noble houses collapsing, economic systems fracturing, the Umbral Accord losing control of multiple financial corridors, all tied to her investigative actions, as if her existence was not just observed but required. Selene closed the ledger slowly. "This isn't prediction," she said quietly. "It's orchestration." Aurelian did not deny it. Instead, he looked at the vault walls, as if searching for something that should not be there. "There are things in Karethwyn that operate beyond the Accord," he said carefully. "Systems older than any noble house. Systems that do not react to power, only inevitability." Selene stepped back slightly. "And you knew about this?" A pause. "Too long, I knew fragments," Aurelian admitted. "Not the whole structure." That was the first crack in his certainty she had ever seen. Silence settled between them again, heavier now. Then the vault itself responded. A low mechanical hum echoed through the chamber. The pedestal beneath the ledger shifted, revealing a second hidden compartment that began to rise from beneath the stone floor. Inside it lay a second document sealed in translucent crystal, but it was already open, as if it had been waiting. Selene reached for it slowly, hesitation sharpening every movement. Aurelian did not stop her. The crystal shattered the moment she touched it, releasing a thin projection of glowing text into the air between them. It was not a ledger. It was a record of correspondence, multiple entries, all addressed to a single designation. Draycott Line, Aurelian Protocol Vessel. Selene's eyes narrowed. Protocol Vessel, she repeated. Aurelian's expression tightened slightly, but he still did not move. The projection continued. The entries described monitored interactions between Duke Aurelian Draycott and Selene Vaelith from the moment of her registration in the Imperial system. Not just observation, but guidance, subtle influence points, adjustments to meeting timings, controlled introductions to council members, even the audit assignment itself. Selene slowly turned toward him. "You didn't meet me by chance," she said. It was not a question. Aurelian's silence confirmed it more than words ever could. The projection shifted again, revealing a final directive stamped in deep crimson script. Ensure emotional proximity threshold achieved. Initiate trust dependency phase. Selene stepped back as if struck. Her breath quickened, but her voice remained controlled. "So what was I then?" Aurelian finally looked at her directly. For the first time, his voice carried something unguarded, not softness, but strain. "You were never supposed to be a variable that could think independently," he said. "You were supposed to follow the pattern." Selene's hands curled into fists, ink-stained fingers trembling slightly. And what changed? A long pause. The vault lights flickered once. "You did," Aurelian said quietly. That answer did not comfort her. It destabilized her further. Before she could respond, the vault doors behind them began to close slowly on their own. No mechanism, no command, just motion. Selene turned sharply. "It's sealing us in." Aurelian did not move. "No," he said. "It's sealing something else out." The stone doors sealed shut with a deep resonant impact, and then the vault went silent again, but only for a moment, because from somewhere deeper beneath the structure, something began to echo upward. A second set of movement, slower, heavier, as if something inside the foundation of Karethwyn itself had just awakened because they were there. Selene looked at Aurelian, her voice lower now. "Tell me the truth. What else is down here?" Aurelian's gaze remained fixed on the dark corridor beyond the vault. "Something that does not recognize either of us as authorized." And then the lights in the vault went out completely. In total darkness, Selene hears a voice inside the vault that sounds exactly like hers, but it is reading out actions she has not yet taken. If you're watching this story from anywhere in the world, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where Karethwyn's story is reaching you from. And if you want more tales like this, make sure you subscribe to Sandy Love Tales, because the final phase will reveal who is truly writing Selene's future. And it is not the Duke. Total darkness swallowed the vault beneath Karethwyn. Selene Vaelith stood frozen, her pulse hammering in her ears as the impossible voice echoed through the chamber. It sounded exactly like her. Not similar, not close, exact. Every inflection, every breath, every pause. "3 steps forward," the voice said calmly from somewhere beyond the darkness. Selene did not move. Then, before she could react, the voice continued. "You hesitate. You look toward Aurelian. You wonder whether he is still lying to you." Selene's blood ran cold, because that was precisely what she had just done. Beside her, Duke Aurelian Draycott remained motionless. His cold gray eyes searched the darkness while one hand slowly moved toward the concealed blade beneath his obsidian coat. "It knows your actions before you take them," he said quietly. The darkness answered him, "In fact, I do not predict them." A faint blue glow appeared in the distance. "I record them." The glow expanded. Ancient runes across the vault walls awakened one by one, casting pale light throughout the chamber. What emerged from the darkness stole the breath from both of them. Standing at the far end of the vault was another Selene, same hazel eyes, same braided crown, same ash-gray robes, same satchel. Even the ink stains matched perfectly. The second Selene looked at them with unsettling calm. "You finally arrived," she said. The real Selene stared in disbelief. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head slightly. A better question would be, when am I? Silence filled the vault. Aurelian stepped forward protectively. Explain. The second Selene smiled faintly. For centuries, Karethwyn has been governed by more than noble houses and hidden accords. Beneath every kingdom, every empire, every dynasty, there exists a structure designed to preserve balance. The registry beneath this vault is not a financial archive. It is a continuity engine. Neither of them spoke. Whenever corruption grows beyond repair, the second Selene continued, the engine selects a catalyst, someone capable of triggering collapse so that renewal can begin. The real Selene felt her stomach tighten. Catalyst. Yes, said the second Selene. You. The runes around the chamber brightened. Thousands of glowing records suddenly appeared in the air around them. Selene watched in horror as countless versions of events unfolded within the floating projections. Different timelines, different outcomes, different lives. In one, she never came to Karethwyn. In another, Aurelian betrayed her immediately. In another, the kingdom burned in civil war. In another, the Umbral Accord conquered the realm completely. Hundreds, thousands, endless possibilities. Every path was observed, said the second Selene. Every outcome recorded. The real Selene turned slowly toward Aurelian. You knew? No, he answered immediately. For once, she believed him. The second Selene walked among the floating projections. The continuity engine selected you years ago. Long before your arrival, long before you knew this kingdom existed. Selene shook her head. Why me? The answer came softly. Because you always choose truth over comfort. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a new projection appeared above the chamber. This one showed Duke Aurelian Draycott standing before the leaders of the Umbral Accord years earlier. Younger, desperate, cornered. Selene watched silently. The projection revealed everything. His father's debts, the collapse of House Virelin, the impossible ultimatum placed upon him. The years spent sacrificing pieces of his freedom to keep his family from ruin. Then came the final memory. The order concerning Selene. Gain her trust, secure her loyalty, neutralize the threat. Selene closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The truth she had feared. When she opened them again, Aurelian was already looking at her. He did not defend himself. It started as manipulation, he admitted. Every part of it. The words hurt more because they were honest. Then why protect me, she asked quietly. Aurelian laughed once, bitterly. Because somewhere along the way I stopped seeing a problem to solve. His voice lowered, and started seeing you. The chamber fell silent. The second Selene observed them both carefully. This is why the system failed, she said. What? Asked Aurelian. You were expected to remain predictable. She looked directly at him. Instead, you changed. For the first time, uncertainty crossed the second Selene's face. The continuity engine accounts for logic. It struggles with sacrifice. Suddenly, the entire vault shook violently. Cracks spread across the glowing runes. Floating records flickered. The second Selene turned sharply toward the central chamber. No. A deafening roar echoed beneath the foundation. The continuity engine was destabilizing. Across the floating projections, timelines began collapsing one after another. Entire futures disappeared. Records burned into streams of light. What is happening? Selene shouted. The second Selene looked at her. The system can no longer calculate a stable outcome. Why? The answer came immediately. Because of him. Every eye turned toward Aurelian. He was supposed to choose survival. The chamber trembled harder. Instead, he chose you. The realization struck Selene like lightning. Every prediction, every manipulation, every carefully controlled outcome had depended upon people acting according to self-interest. Yet Aurelian had broken the pattern. Not through power, through choice. The continuity engine could not understand it. The vault began collapsing. Massive pieces of obsidian fell from above. Blue energy erupted through the chamber. The second Selene looked toward the failing core. There is only one way to stop this. Selene already knew what was coming. Someone must remain behind. Silence. Then Aurelian stepped forward. No, Aurelian. For the first time since they met, the Duke's voice carried raw emotion. I spent years sacrificing everything for people who never cared. I'm done letting others decide who pays the price. Before either woman could stop him, he moved. Aurelian crossed the chamber and reached the continuity core. Blue energy exploded around him. The vault shook violently. Selene screamed. He turned toward her one last time. For the first time, his cold gray eyes carried no walls. No calculations, no secrets, only truth. You taught me something, he said. Truth changes people. Then he drove his hand into the core. The world erupted in white light. The continuity engine shattered. Every projection vanished. Every timeline disappeared. Every prediction ceased to exist. Silence followed, long, endless silence. When Selene opened her eyes, she was lying beneath the morning sky outside the Grand Registry. The storm over Karethwyn was gone. The oppressive weight hanging over the kingdom had vanished. Days passed, then weeks. Investigations spread throughout the realm. Noble corruption was exposed. The umbral accord collapsed almost overnight. Hidden accounts were seized. Illegally acquired estates were returned. For the first time in generations, Karethwyn began rebuilding itself honestly. Yet none of that mattered to Selene, because Aurelian was gone. Months later, she stood atop the sea cliffs overlooking the kingdom. Wind moved through her hair. The waves crashed far below. In her hands rested the only surviving page from the destroyed continuity engine, blank for months, until now. Slowly, words appeared across the page. Fresh ink, new writing. Selene's breath caught. The message contained only one sentence. A future cannot be predicted after it has been earned. Beneath the words appeared a familiar signature, Aurelian Draycott. Selene smiled through tears. Somewhere beyond prediction, somewhere beyond control, somewhere beyond every recorded future, he was alive. And for the first time in either of their lives, neither of them belonged to destiny anymore. They belonged to choice. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Did Aurelian deserve a second chance after everything he did? I'd love to read your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe to Sandy Love Tales for more unforgettable romance, mystery, and noble court drama. The next story may be even more shocking than this one.